A vanilla exotic. The Hunter exotic helmet, the Knucklehead Radar, was once considered decent as it provided a feature that was unique, as all exotics should, but since then, the uniqueness of the Knucklehead has plummeted, and now it remains as a completely outdated and outclassed exotic. I'll get into why the exotic is outdated in a minute, but first I'll go over my suggested perks. So like most exotic helms, you can reroll the perks to your liking, but the Knucklehead is different in this regard, as it allows you to have 2 of these ability perks, instead of the usual 1. In the second slot, most other helms either have Second Thoughts or Heavy Lifting, which provides bonus super energy from special or heavy weapon kills respectively. But the Knucklehead can grant you Inverse Shadow and Ashes Asset or Hands On in the second slot, which provides far more flexibility in both PvE and the Crucible. The final node should always be Infusion or better already. The exotic perk grants you a visible radar while aiming with primary weapons, which is completely unchanged since the exotic's launch. This equates to you getting the Third Eye perk for free on all primary weapons, which is by no means bad, but it is quite situational. Your stack configuration is going to be fairly optional with the Knucklehead, since it is entirely subclass neutral. I've rolled mine with a 109 stat roll, being about 98% of the max, and I've gone for a 552 build. Alright, let's get into the subclasses. I'll start by saying that the Knucklehead is not a PvE exotic at all. Sure, having your radar active while aiming is never particularly bad, but it is a bit excessive when you're fighting AI, and don't need to get the first shot off in a firefight or anything. There's also a ton of other exotics that are already tweaked for hunters in PvE, so go with one of them. The first subclass we'll look at is the Night Stalker, probably my least preferred class in the Crucible. I've seen some people use this subclass very well, but I've just never been particularly good with it. Since this build is all about your radar, using Keen Scout will further grant you the enhanced tracker ability, making your radar more specific. The abilities of the Night Stalker have always tended to be its greatest strength, so Void Wall and Envenomed Smoke Grenades, stacked with a 2-5-5 configuration, would be my suggestion. Decent for sure, but not something I would typically run with. Next is the Blade Dancer, and I usually keep this build for anything Blade Dancer in the Crucible. Whether I'm using Crest of Alpha Lupi, Mask of the Third Man, Tarantella, or in this case the Knucklehead, I tend to stay with this build. Flux Grenades, Blink, Fast Twitch, Quick Draw, and Hungarian Blade. A good setup to work with the original 5-5-2 stack configuration. Just like the Blade Dancer, for the Gunslinger I stick to the usual Crucible build, whether or not I use the Arachnid, Crest, Aculophage, or the Knucklehead. So what would be my actual recommended subclass? I don't know. I've personally run this with both the Blade Dancer and the Gunslinger and had success with both, but honestly, the Night Stalker would probably be just as good. To be fair, this is how subclass neutrals should ultimately work. They shouldn't be necessarily better on any particular subclass over the others, but if I was going to recommend a subclass, I guess the Gunslinger would be the best choice. Now I can get into why this exotic is outdated and really not worth your time. Besides the fact that the Third Eye and Relentless Tracker perks can already roll on most primary weapons, there is a legendary artifact which provides both of these perks. The Memory of Gillian artifact provides both the detailed and active radar while aiming primary weapons. So what are the options? You can use an exotic helmet, which ties up your exotic slot and is hunter specific, to get half of a legendary artifact. The Memory of Gillian is not going to consume your exotic slot, isn't bound by any character, and gives you a Relentless Tracker on top of Third Eye. Practically speaking, there is never going to be a solid reason to use the Knucklehead over the Memory of Gillian. The only way I was able to justify using it was that the roll I had on my Gillian was pretty average, and I just couldn't work a tier 12 build while using it. I'd still consider a tier 12 Gillian build to be far stronger than a tier 12 Knucklehead build, but at this stage, I was just looking for something positive to say about the Knucklehead. I guess it also frees you up to use the Memory of Silmar, which reduces damage over time effects on you, but honestly, if you do have a well-rolled Memory of Gillian, or just aren't at all fussed about tier 12 builds, then there really isn't any reason to use the Knucklehead over the artifact. Thanks for watching guys, still got a couple of exotics left before we get into the Destiny 2 beta, so if you want to make a suggestion, just let me know in the comments below. Catch you later.